Chetan, we talk now following the Hyderabad Test match, and India really did beat Australia out of sight. An innings and 135 runs, the margin of victory. The first time a team has lost a game by an innings after declaring their first innings. Just give us your overview from the game. After all, you were there for us.
John, I think, teams who usually lose the first test match of a series, they come back stronger in the second test match. There are always mistakes made in the first test. You're after all playing in alien conditions, and obviously Australia have brought a very, very young and inexperienced side. But obviously they learned something from the Chennai test match. However, you need to put that to use. In two test matches in the series so far, Australia have batted first in conditions which have been very, very good, but they have not been able to make full use or make full advantage of that particular point. And I think in more than in Chennai, it hurt them in Hyderabad, because 237 is not a first innings total in a test match of this value in a test match which is being played in a subcontinent. So I think that was a point that really hurt them, and that is the advantage that they did not drive home. And this is the basic point that they needed to learn from Chennai. The fact of the matter is that they had made two changes. They had brought in two spinners instead of one spinner. One of them was another all-rounder, so they had another batting option in Glenn Maxwell. So they had strengthened their batting in a way, you can say. But for them to score 237 runs, I think that was a big error, and it didn't really happen for them. You can talk about the Hyderabad pitch, that it was taking a quicker turn than the slower pitch in Chennai. There was a little more bounce on the third and the fourth day when the wickets just fell in a heap. But the first 2 days, there was a bit in the pitch. If the seam of the ball was hitting the seam of the ball was hitting the pitch, and I think the Indian bowlers in the first innings were very, very good. They bowled very, very well, especially Bhuvneshwar Kumar. He read the pitch absolutely right. He knew he needed to hit the pitch hard and let the ball cut away. We were not watching the ball swing. We were watching the ball seam from Bhuvneshwar Kumar's hand, and that is what did the trick. And when you think about it, 237 runs in the first innings, and then that major collapse which just gave them 131 odd in the second innings, you have to look at Australia's shot selection. Sure, they are aggressive batsmen. They have aggressive batsmen in David Warner, in Shane Watson, Matthew Wade, Moses Henriquez. These are aggressive batsmen in any format of the game. But again, you have to be patient. You have to bide your time. You have to select proper shots in Test cricket. Australia made a lot of errors in judgment, especially in batting during this Test match. There were other errors as well, like Michael Clarke adamant in batting at number 5. We've seen Phil Hughes struggle against spin, he's batting on a wicket that is always turning square. I don't know if dropping Nathan Lyon was such a brilliant idea. I thought, despite the fact that Xavier Doherty and Glenn Maxwell got some wickets on the third day, I thought Nathan Lyon should have played. However, the small point is that the Australian batting really left them stranded.
Yes, it takes me back to when I remember playing in my youth, Chetan. I remember one of my coaches said, it doesn't matter what level of the game you're playing, whether it's one-day cricket, 2020, your primary objective is still to not get out, and that neatly ties in with your point about you've got to be aggressive, but you've still got to be patient and wait for the right ball to hit. Now, thinking about the Indian performance, I want to get your view on the positive points for the test. You've mentioned Bhuvneshwar Kumar, but that partnership between Murali, Vijay and Cheteshwar Pujara obviously changed the direction of the game, but also the way that Ravi Ashwin bowled yet again.
Well, I think yes. I think batting was the major talking point here, because as you've seen from the first day, as also on the third and the fourth day, once the new batsman came to bat on the pitch, it was not easy to bat. You need to bide your time. You need to be patient on the crease. You needed to select proper run scoring shots and not just play attacking shots all the time. I think Murali, Vijay and Cheteshwar Pujara did that very, very brilliantly. The first session of play on the second day, after Sehwag got out, they did not score many runs. I think only 40 or 50 odd runs came in that particular session. That set them up very, very well for the later half of that day. On the second day, they batted very, very beautifully in the second session as well in the third session. And the scoring rate just really picked up, because they had set themselves in, they had set themselves up. They had watched and they have waited and they had played themselves in on a pitch which was not very easy to bat for the new batsmen. And this we saw on the third morning when Murali Vijay got out and Cheteshwar Pujara got out. And then the new batsmen came in, and the Indian batsmen too, the later batsmen, they also struggled. India lost their last 7 wickets for just 100-odd runs. So you have to give credit here to Murali, Vijay and Cheteshwar Pujara. I think Murali Vijay's 100 was a big step forward for him, because India have been struggling with their openers. He failed in Chennai, which was his home test, which was imperative for him to do well, because Shikhar Dhawan was waiting in the wings. Gautam Gambhir has scored some runs in domestic cricket. So in a way, it was very, very important for him to save his career there, and he scored some runs. So he's assured to play the next 2 tests, probably assured to continue as India's opener in test cricket in the near future or later in the year, as it might be. And Cheteshwar Pujara, what do you say about him? His second double 100 of the season, just 10, not even 10 test matches. He's played not even all 10 test matches in this particular season. And it has not been a home season for India to write a lot about. Losing to England was a major, major blow. They've beaten New Zealand, yes. They're probably on their way to beat Australia, yes. But losing to England was not something that was acceptable to the fans here. But he has come in. He's made the number 3 spot all his own. He's not allowed people to think about Rahul Dravid. And I think that is a big, big achievement. Nobody is missing Rahul Dravid. Or let me just rephrase that. Despite the difficult times, the Indian cricket fans are thinking that they have found someone who can, harbor the innings, who can play the innings, and he's doing it very, very well. So all kudos to Cheteshwar Pujara. You can just expect him to go on, and I think he will.
Now, although India obviously won by a huge margin, and you could argue that's their most impressive performance this summer, would you still say there's room for improvement? I've sort of picked out perhaps Ravi Jadeja, Harbhajan Singh, Jadeja with the bat and Harbhajan with the ball, not perhaps performing to their potential. And we've talked already about that collapse in the first inning. I think it was 6 for 91 they lost their final wickets for. So perhaps India could do better maybe, or are we being a little bit too harsh?
I think whenever the teams on a winning role, selectors and team management need to take a considerable view of the performance of those who have not really been up to scratch. Yes, you can say that in a way that India's bowling, apart from Ashwin and maybe Bhuvneshwar Kumar, hasn't looked the part, particularly in this test match. So you have to give credit to Ashwin here. Did not discuss him in the last question, but yes, Ashwin has been on the money. He's realized what his mistakes were during the England Test series. He was experimenting too much with his line and length. He's a bowler who has natural variation, and when you have natural variation, it is still very important to stick to your line and length, and that is what he was not doing against England. And this is what he's learned. He's come in. He's made some differences to his bowling technique, bowling angle, bowling position. That's what he talked about after the Chennai Test match. And now it's showing. He's more consistent in his line and length. His variations are still there, but he's being very, very consistent. And another bowler who's been consistent is Ravindra Jadeja. However, you have to consider the fact that India currently are playing horses for courses policy, where they're putting in 5 bowlers and MS Dhoni is batting up at number 6. I'm not really sure there's a policy that will work on away tours, especially South Africa later in the year. And Dhoni himself has admitted as much. Because somebody like Ravindra Jadeja, he's not really an all-rounder in the true sense of the word. He's a bowling all-rounder. And when you talk about bowling all-rounders, he's somebody who contributes more with the ball and less with the bat. And yes, he's a different limited overs player. He's done well in T20 and ODI cricket. He can hit a few in those particular formats. But Test cricket is altogether a different arena. He's got big runs in domestic cricket, but again, Test cricket is at a completely different level. He was struggling against pace. He was struggling against spin. So I think that's an area where India will have to take considerable risk in deciding whether they want to pursue this 5 bowler theory or go in with a number 6 batsman, say Ajinkya Rahane, who's been waiting in the wings. The other point, of course, is about Harbhajan Singh. Yes, he's flying below the radar at the moment because India have won their last 2 test matches in considerable fashion. When you hear MS Dhoni speak in the press conference, he's always very defensive about Harbhajan Singh, talking about 100 test matches, 400 plus test wickets. But the fact of the matter is that all of that is in the past. Harbhajan Singh right now is performing way below his potential. He should be India's lead spinner. He is not. That has gone. He's probably India's number 3 spinner in this bowling lineup. And if you consider Apragyan Ojha, I think he is India's number 4 spinner at the moment in this particular squad. So that says a lot about Harbhajan Singh. The other point of worry for India, of course, is Virender Sehwag, and his form was really under the scanner, and he's obviously, as has become clear, he's been dropped for the third and fourth test. So you can say the second opener slot, because the first one has probably now been sorted out with the runs coming off Murali Vijay's blade, but the second opener slot remains a worry.
Yes, I want to talk about Sehwag now, Chet, and obviously we know he's been dropped. Quite a ruthless decision, perhaps. Maybe not, because he hasn't scored big runs for a while. I think it's 2 centuries in the last 2.5 years. He hasn't got a run to speak of in this series. I just wonder your reaction to that decision. Also, whether you think the selectors would have made the same decision if the series was still alive, in terms of Australia being able to come back and win, and whether you think that's it for Sehwag at international level, or he'll be back.
Well, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Virender Sehwag to come back, but we'll come back to that part later. First question, yes, it is a very, very harsh decision, but if you look at this particular selection committee headed by Sandeep Patil, they are making some harsh decisions. They dropped after India lost the Kolkata Test match and went 2-1, went under 2-1. They dropped Zahir Khan, they dropped Zahir Khan, Harbhajan Singh and Yuvraj Singh. They axed them. Suresh Raina was axed after the New Zealand series, and Gautam Gambhir was dropped after the ODI series. Virender Sehwag was dropped from the ODI series as well during the ODI series against England and Pakistan. Now they have tried new openers in Murali Vijay and Shikhar Dhawan in place of Gautam Gambhir, and now Virender Sehwag again finds himself out of the test side. So yes, this is being consistent from this selection panel. They're trying something new. They know the transition is here for Indian cricket, and they're trying new players. They're giving opportunities to somebody like Bhuvneshwar Kumar or somebody like Ravindra Jadeja and Ajinkya Rahane without the pressures of the seniors or the used up names, as I would like to call them, because they have, like somebody like a Yuvraj Singh or Suresh Raina have been called up many, many times for that number 6 slot. But coming to this opener's decision, yes, not really a harsh decision. It was coming, I thought, because as you mentioned, not too many high scores for Virender Sehwag. It's been 4 test matches against England, 2 against New Zealand, 2 against Australia. That's 8 test matches, and he's just got the 100. And if you talk about runs in the past couple of seasons or so, 2.5 years, as you mentioned, with 2 test hundreds. He's averaging 26 since 2010-11 season. One of the major problems for Indian cricket has been that their openers are not firing. So now that problem has been identified and the selection committee wants to ring in changes, I think it's just logical that they try new names. Everybody expected the axe to come on Virender Sehwag, and obviously it's also become noticeable that his hand-eye coordination is not that quick anymore. He's been dropping a lot of catches in the slips. I think more than hand-eye coordination while batting, when the catches are dropped in the slip cordon, I think that is a bigger pointer that the player's concentration levels or the player's age is catching up with him. Whether he'll be back in the Indian side, I think that's a tough one, because he's already been dropped from the ODI setup. He's now been dropped from the Test setup. India don't play any more Test matches till the South African tour later in the year. They'll play ODI cricket in England for the Champions Trophy, in West Indies, and against Australia at home. Probably he might get a chance if he does well in the IPL, or if he does well in the few first-class matches starting in September and October, just ahead of the South African tour, because it's going to be a huge tour, and he's an experienced player. So he needs to get his act together. He needs to try and impress in the IPL, probably force his way back into the ODI side, because that will be the key. If he gets back into the ODI side, he has 7 ODIs in October against Australia to stake a claim for the South African tour. And if he doesn't get back to the ODI side, I'm not really sure he'll be on the plane to South Africa. And he's not retiring just yet. He's not announced his retirement just yet. But I'm afraid that the selectors might have already moved on.
Now, Cheston, I was going to ask you for an assessment of where Australia are, but I think you answered that pretty well in the first question. So I'll move on to finish with a bit of a preview for Mohali. We know India are going to make at least one change to replace Sehwag, of course. So if you can sort of give us an idea of any other changes you might foresee, and possibly what might Australia try and get something out of this series?
I think the Mohali pitch will be a lot harder than the pitches they have seen at Chennai and Hyderabad. They might be a little bit on the 4th and 5th day. I think this test match will go into the 5th day. There might be a little bit more bounce for Australia, and they might be encouraged to bring in Mitchell Starc back. I think Nathan Lyon should come back, and I think they might try and go in with Glenn Maxwell as well as Nathan Lyon and drop Xavier Doherty completely. Because I thought that was a really, I didn't agree with that decision of dropping Nathan Lyon, because he might have given away a lot of runs, but he was looking very dangerous in spells to Sachin Tendulkar and Virat Kohli, and he dismissed Sachin Tendulkar as well. So maybe bringing Nathan Lyon is one of the options. The other option, of course, is that because you don't want to play two off spinners in Glenn Maxwell and Nathan Lyon, so you might be tempted to play Steve Smith. And he is fit, available for selection, and he's a leg spinner, plus he's an all-rounder. So it gives a lot of options to Australia. And Michael Clarke did not bowl a lot in the Hyderabad Test because Xavier Doherty was there. He was the left-arm spinner to bowl. So they might go in with Glenn Maxwell, Steve Smith, and Michael Clarke as the third spinning option. And I think it's time that but more than that, I think it's time that Michael Clarke moves up the order. He needs to bat at number 3. He said in the press conference that probably he does not have any choice anymore. I think it's already a test match late. He should have batted at number 3 in Hyderabad, because Australia cannot afford their best batsman to come at the crease when the score is 40 for 3 or 50 for 4. They just cannot afford that. So Michael Clarke to bat at number 3, Phil Hughes to be dropped, and probably Usman Khwaja in at number 5. And if I have to drop Xavier Doherty and play Glenn Maxwell, then I'll probably put in Steve Smith as well. For the Indians, of course, I think the one change that I foresee is probably Shikhar Dhawan coming in as the second opener ahead of obviously dropped Virender Sehwag. I think Ajinkya Rahane is now seen as the middle order option, but because the series is not yet won, they will probably persist with the 5-bowler theory. I would really want Pragyan Oja to play this test match, because he is India's top spinner at the moment, and he's not playing, which is not really good. But India has been winning the last 2 test matches. There are a lot of left-handers, so many theories floating around as to why Harbhajan Singh should play. So probably just the one change for India, bring in Shikhar Dhawan instead of Virender Sehwag, and that should be it for India.